Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, Brett. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you today?
I'm great. You're better than okay, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
You think you're good?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I'm excellent.
Excellent. So we wanted to have a conversation. You know, we've seen a lot of international and national firms making their way into the Miami market, you know, big headlines splashed all over the place. And, you know, there's like this now idea about big firm, small firm, you know, what should I do as a young lawyer? Not me personally, but if I was a young lawyer asking that question, what should I do? Should I go big firm, smaller firm, boutique firm? Big firms are, you know, the price tags are high. They're paying big dollars. And we know kind of what goes along with that.
Right.
And so we thought we'd talk maybe a little bit about that today.
I think it's a great topic. You and I are big firm, former big firm guys. I worked at 2 international firms, and you know, I certainly understand the allure. But I think the question really, obviously, it's an individual question.
Yeah.
I don't know that you and I could answer that for anyone.
Nope.
But if we were asked, and we are asked pretty frequently by young lawyers what to do, I think first it depends on the firm and the office. Right.
So the firm, the office, the practice area.
Right. Firm, the office, the practice area, the people you're working with.
Right.
You know, there's so many factors. But if we start with the firm and the office, to me, it's, you know, we've seen, as an example, if it's a new office, I would want to put some thought into how committed they are, because I remember back in the 90s, Miami led the nation in failed satellite offices. And there were a string of firms who opened Miami offices thinking that they were going to be the gateway to Latin America. And when that didn't work out, you know, when they start to cut costs, where's the first place you cut costs? The last office you opened, you know, let's shut that down. And so that would be at least one concern. But then it really depends on the practice, you know, is the kind of practice that needs a big firm, you know, platform. Some practices lend themselves more to that. You know, M&A, for example, if you're doing big ticket M&A, you know, an M&A, a merger or acquisition requires multiple areas of expertise. You need labor and employment, you need tax, you might need real estate, you need regulatory, transactional. There's so many, you know, pieces to that it's hard to assemble them through smaller firms. But
yeah, and I mean, look, I mean, there are definitely, we know big firms and individual groups and offices that have, you know, high quality bankruptcy or litigation departments as well, or individual lawyers that are really good there too. So I think the initial issues and questions you raised, which is look at the office, look at the practice area, look at the individual people and lawyers that you're going to be working with, right? But to me, a lot of it is asking questions, you know, and not just going along with, well, hey, man, look at the name is great and look how beautiful their offices are.
Don't buy it, just buy into the brand.
Just buy into the brand. And then you listen, and it's hard when you're a young lawyer, but, you know, looking at the price tag and how much they're willing to throw at you. And we've seen over the years, like those numbers just jump to what was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, just inconceivable, right? And so along with that, though, you have to ask those questions. Well, okay, if you're going to pay me that, and if you're going to bring me in, let me ask these questions. Like, what am I going to be? What are the expectations? What am I going to be doing? Who am I going to be working with? You know, what am I going to be doing?
Yeah. I think the compensation is, you know, we can spend, you know, an hour on just the compensation. But before we get to that, I think part of it is, who are you going to work with? Really, that's really what matters most. If you're part of a small group in a big office, that group is who you're working with. And I always liked the allure. I remember when I was out looking, I love the idea of a small office of a big firm, because that gives you kind of both worlds. you have a small office where you know everyone and hopefully it's a collegial environment, but you have access to big clients and you have access to expertise in other offices. The risk is if you're a small office at a big firm, that office may not have much of a voice at the firm. And so
it may get shut down, as
right,
you said
it could
earlier.
get shut
right?
down,
Right.
but also your opportunities for advancement may be limited because it's a small office and maybe they don't have pull, or maybe that office isn't profitable as compared to the rest of the firm. And there's so many factors that go along with that stuff. Having said that, your point about compensation, obviously it's a personal thing. Some people are coming out of law school with a ton of debt and the cost of living are higher. And so the allure of that big paycheck is certainly, a driver. But sometimes, it's harder to, one, it comes along with expectations, as you said, and that, those could be billable hours and business development, whatever they may be. But sometimes if the billable hour expectation is so high, when you divide up by the number of hours, and you think about the paycheck could actually be lower per hour than it would be at some other firm that has a lower expectation.
Yeah, and with the compensation, I think you've got to, like you said, ask the expectations and go into that and know, listen, if they're paying me that much, I'm going to have to bill. Like in order for them to make money, right? The firm has to make money.
Yeah, it's a profit.
Number one, they've got it's a business,
they're in the business
so that's
for
okay.
making profit,
they have to make money at their turn of profit. How many hours do I have to bill? What am I going to be billed at? And am I just going to be another number? Like you said, am I working in a smaller group? Is there going to be a name and a face? Like who am I going to be working with?
Are there mentors there? Am I going to get the kind of mentorship that I need?
Yeah. And who else is there? How long have they been there? Is this a tight-knit group?
Right.
Or, the problem you have now is, there's bidding wars for talent from some of these big firms. And especially here in Miami now, you have a lot of these big names coming in and, they're looking to fill the offices and, are they going to be going to other big firms and pulling talent or other law firms in town?
Right.
And so, I always tell young lawyers, I know you feel the same way, at least the old school way was, don't jump around. So if you're going somewhere and you're going to make a move, that's fine if you feel that's the best thing for you. But I would look at the office and figure out, how long has the partner I'm going to be working for been there? How long have the other lawyers been there? And
have any lawyers made partner?
Have any?
Are they making partners?
Is there a partner track? Am I on a partner?
That's what you want. Maybe
you don't want
partnership's not important.
Right. It's all individual, but you need to ask the questions and look behind, some of the sort of shiny objects that they, get thrown at you. And that's hard as a young lawyer. And I understand that. And it's hard, like you said, there's law school loans and, the cost of living is going up, and I get it. But you also have to think about, number one, future, but number two, is the money that different at the end of the day from maybe what a boutique can pay you versus, a big firm, And I think you have to be willing to peel back that onion to make sure that isn't. The other question is this the work I want to do? Am I fulfilled at the end of the day? Am I going to be happy at the end of the day? Fulfilled. And the question you asked is partner track. Is anybody getting elevated? If that's what you want to do, you and I both follow Simon Sinek, who, I think he's brilliant. I think you probably agree. He publishes a daily quote. I guess he calls it Note to Inspire. I give him a plug, not that he needs it from us. And the one that comes to mind that just came out the other day was, do we have the discipline to turn down the job that only pays well in favor of the one that leaves us feeling fulfilled at the end of the day?
I think that's exactly on target. And because, obviously Simon, he doesn't need my help supporting his inspirational quotes, but at the end of the day, first of all, if you look at the dollars, to your point, if you, let's say, for ease of math, a $24,000, a year difference, 100 versus 124, maybe those numbers are low. I'm just using easy math, but seems like a lot. But when you divide it by 12, and now it's $2,000 a month. When you divide it by a paycheck every other week, it's $1,000. When you pull the taxes out of it, it's $700 or $600. Suddenly that money is not so great. And then when you multiply that or divide it by the additional number of hours you're having to put in, you're really making less per hour. And most importantly, that paycheck, that feeling of getting your first paycheck is awesome.
Yeah.
Getting a bonus at the end of the year, awesome. All those things are really great, but the feeling of fulfillment doesn't come from a paycheck. Nobody ever feels great about a paycheck. They get a paycheck, they spend the money.
I would challenge it. It's fleeting. In other words, you
right.
feel
I'm just
fulfilled,
saying, it feels
you
great.
feel validated,
Yeah,
but it doesn't last.
Exactly. And it's on auto deposit or auto direct deposit. You don't even see that money.
Right.
You just have a lifestyle.
Right.
And hopefully you're not, counting pennies at the end of the month or the pay period and that. But once you get to a point where you're not at that level, the money doesn't, make people happy.
And I understand that some may be listening, and I was one of them, right? I came out of law school with a lot of loans, and I started at the state attorney's office, so money wasn't in my mind at that point. But it is hard, and I understand it for some, and they say, I need to earn that kind of money. So when you talk about being fulfilled and blah, 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 I have to do this, and so I get it, and not being critical of it, but it is certainly something to sit back and think about at the end of the day. Where do I want to be in, and I'm not saying it has to be 10 years or 15 years when you're a young lawyer, but 5 years. The other thing you mentioned, and I just wanted to touch on it, which is you mentioned bonus. There's a lot of firms that you should ask the question, what's the bonus structure here? Because if you're paying me that much in salary, the bonus structure may not be that's significant,
Yeah, I have so many thoughts, and I'm going to try to capture them all. One of them is on that point about bonuses. So bonuses are intended to be rewards for good behavior. And so along the lines of the point about expectations, if the billable expectation is 2,200 hours, then in order for you to exceed those expectations, you have to bill 2,400 or 2,600 or whatever that number is. And so it becomes increasingly difficult to exceed expectations. Whereas if you're at a lower firm with a lower expectation, it's easier to exceed expectations and still have a life. So I'll make that point. The second is, the reason Simon's quote is, we're on a first name basis.
Yeah.
Simon's quote is so, you know why? Because is it cynic or cynic? I think it's cynic, but I don't know.
Cynic?
Anyways, I didn't want to struggle with this. So I'm going to call him Simon.
He's a cynic.
Simon, exactly. Simon's quote, the reason is, he says it takes courage.
Yeah.
It's not easy to take less money. It's a struggle. And I remember, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I came out of law school and I did a clerkship first. My starting salary was $38,000. And you know what? I was happy because I went from 0 to 38. Now, I wouldn't have wanted to go to a big law firm and then nobody wants to go backwards. But I knew, okay, this is a stepping stone. I'm going to do this for a year. Mm-hmm. I'm making more than I did before. By the way, I was very, very happy. And, it was plenty of money for me at that time. And I knew that the next salary level would be higher. And so I would grow into my obligations. Eventually, I'm going to get to a point where I can pay off these debts. The debts remain fairly constant, but for interest. But I knew that eventually I'm going to get to a point where I can start paying it down. And each time I would do that. That's how I did it. Every time I got a raise, I would allocate that much more to paying down debt or maximizing 401k or any of those things. There's just so much that goes into this decision.
You were at 38, man. You were I was at 26 when I started as a prosecutor.
Yeah.
In that view, I tried to just jump in and get the experience and, knowing that was not
you knew that it was
a long-term play for me.
You had the courage, though, to do that because you knew that was better for you in the long term. And that's why I think, his quote is relevant.
It is. Listen, it's hard. I mean, it is hard to do, especially, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I had all these. I did not have offers from big firms. I did not have that option back then.
Only because they didn't see clearly.
Yeah, exactly. So when you have that option, that's hard. I get it. Hard.
To turn it down. If you were looking at, I don't think you could sit here and say, if I had 4 offers, 2 from big firms, 2 from small, and 1 from state attorneys, that you would have gone to state attorneys. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to say I don't know.
Right. Okay.
I think that would be a very difficult thing for me to turn down back then. So I recognize that. And maybe I didn't have the courage back then to ask the questions given my experience today.
Right.
And sitting here and talking about it. But when someone comes, like recently someone came to me and asked me, they were going to a big firm and they asked me if I thought it was a mistake. And I said, my response was, I can't tell you that. It is not for me to say if it's a mistake for you.
Right.
But here's what I can tell you to expect when you go to that firm.
Right.
And what you can expect if you don't go there, you work at a boutique or a smaller firm,
Right.
and the differences.
Right.
And here's the things you should know or ask about before you go there to make sure that it is the right place for you. And by the way, some people, it is the absolute right place to be. They thrive there. They make a great career out of it, and they're super successful. So
Right.
fantastic. But before you go, you should ask the right questions and get the answers to those questions and make sure there's transparency.
Yeah, it is tough. And talk to a lot of people, I think. And nowadays it's so different because now with the internet and, there's, Glassdoor and there's so many different, sites where you can access information to different Glassdoor, Glass Ceiling. What's the name of that? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Something with
there's
glass.
so much access to information that, it's easy to gather a lot. But I don't think it's fair to say that all big firms are, they work their people to the bone and small firms don't, because I remember friends. I had one friend in particular who worked at a boutique firm, less than 10 lawyers, I think. And I remember when we were starting out, he had to work every single Saturday. And he said, most Saturdays I come in and I read the newspaper. I don't have anything to do, but the expectation is that I'm going to be here. And because that's the way the partner of that firm or the head of that firm,
right.
That was his mindset. And so I was a big law guy and I rarely worked on the weekends. But my practice was I would stay late on Friday night. With my friends, we wouldn't go out until late at night on Fridays back in those days. So I would work into my office until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night on a Friday because, I did that weekend work on Friday night. And then I would probably pick up some stuff on Sunday. One thing it took me a long time to learn, though, is taking work home on the weekend. I learned that the more, and it took me years to learn this, the more I brought home, the less likely I was to do the work. So I would bring, if I brought home 10 files, I probably wouldn't touch any of them. But over time, I learned if I brought one file home or 2 files home, it was more manageable. It wasn't as intimidating. I would go and, and let me knock this one thing out. It'll make my Monday that much easier. And so all those things, these are very individualized, and that's the point is, I don't think you can judge a book by its cover in this way and say, okay, all big firms are bad, and or even a big firm that has a reputation of being a sweatshop. There's 200 lawyers there or 300 lawyers there that have been there for a long time, so they're doing something right, or it's right enough,
right?
For people to stay there. So you got to find the group that fits your needs, the practice that fits your needs, the expectations, and are you going to be happy?
And again, don't be afraid to ask the question and ask the questions that you want answers to that are for you, right? That are your issues before you make a decision. And for I guess, given, when I said the talent wars, but given that right now it seems like it is a buyer's market if you are a lawyer looking for a job, that you have the flexibility and the ability to ask those questions and inquire to make sure that you go in eyes wide open no matter where you're going. Like you said, even a small firm with your friend who had to work on Saturdays. Right. I mean, I was at the state attorney's office like on Sundays usually, or the weekends sometimes before a trial week.
Oh, yeah.
I had my boxes at home and I was going through everything, prepping for trials.
Sure. The other sort of myth, I suppose, is that if you're at a big firm, you're not going to get real experience. And I would say the law of averages says, yeah, that's probably true, but I'm sure there are lots of exceptions. And I would say the same for the flip side. There's a lot of small firms where the partner does everything and that they don't let the associates do anything. You and I work really hard to, often sacrificing our own desires and to handle hearings. We work really hard to promote our younger people and have them get the experience that they need. Mm-hmm. And there are oral arguments I can think of that I wanted to do or you wanted to do, and we've talked through and said, you know what, we should let the associate do it because it's a great experience and they'll get more out of it.
And that's a question
that doesn't
you should
happen
be asking
at every firm.
Right. You should be asking those questions, right? We talked about, just because it's a big firm doesn't mean if you're working at a smaller practice group or a particular office or for a particular partner, you may get that experience there.
Right.
That maybe someone else in a different office doesn't have because of who they're working for or what practice area. So
but not just ask the partner that you're going to work for, ask the associates on the team.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is when you're interviewing, if you're not meeting, are you meeting people? Who are they introducing you to? If you're only meeting partners, maybe that's a red flag. Why am I not meeting any of the associates on this team? Are they trying to shield me from them?
Right.
And reach out to them if you're not asked. Or say, you know what, can I meet some of the associates? The other thing I would say is, on the topic of asking questions is look around you when you're walking through a law firm on interviews. Do people pass each other in the hall and not acknowledge each other? Do they say we have an open door policy and you're walking down the hallway and every door is closed? Is it quiet like you can hear a pin drop? Maybe that's the environment you want if you want a quiet environment, or are people talking to each other and interacting? And how did the partner treat the associate, or how do people interact with each other? Because from my view, they're on their best behavior then. When you're walking through, it's not going to get better. They're not going to be nicer than when you're there. So if they're rude to each other then, they're going to be rude to each other all the time, or disrespectful, or whatever it is. So
you raise an interesting point. Normally, in pre-COVID times, you'd be able to see that.
Yeah.
But today, a lot of large firms are not back in the office.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And so you may not get that opportunity. And so it may become even more important to ask the question, hey, am I going to get to talk to or interview with others, fellow associates I may be working with, or other lawyers I'm going to be working with, or dare I say even paralegals or staff members, like other people at the firm that I can talk to, and not just partners. I don't know hiring, how it works at other firms, whatever. And are we going to be back in the office? And anytime soon, are we back in the office? And because as a young lawyer, to me, it's invaluable to be around. I mean, there's been, everyone, I don't think anyone disagrees that it is super valuable for young lawyers to be around. To get the benefit of the pop in, hanging around, just hearing things, or being pulled into a meeting so they could sit and listen and learn, whatever it is. And so if you're at a firm that the offices are closed, that, you may, frankly, coming into a practice group that you're not going to be working with people that are located in your area, that you primarily may be working with people outside of the area, which means you may not have that interaction, walking down the hall, or it's going to be all video conference or phone or email, a message board, whatever it is. And they say, hey, I need this memo by this date. Great, thanks. And that's all you get, as opposed to really interacting with people. And so in today's world, that's changed, right? Substantially from what it used to be.
For sure. To your point, you learn so much as a young lawyer about the cases that you're not involved in when you're in the office. When you're working remotely, you're working, you're learning from the people you're talking about, but you're learning about those cases, and that's it. When you're in the office, you overhear conversation about a topic or a struggle that someone's having, or like we have this all the time in our office. When someone has a big hearing or a big depo, you come out of that hearing or a depo by video, and you're kind of have this energy, and you walk out in the hall, and then you start telling the paralegal about it, and we all kind of gather around and hear what happened. And there's so many learning opportunities like that are lost in a remote environment.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think that hybrid and periodic working at home and not in the office all the time, that's fine. But to have no connection, even if they open offices and you're back in the office, are you working with anybody in that office, or just going to be people from different offices where you don't really interact? The
other consideration along those lines is it important to you as a lawyer, is it important to be part of your community? Because at some, particularly this is common in large firms, and I suffer from this as well, and I didn't really realize it as much until after I left and started my own practice, but are you part of the local community? If you're, a litigator, are you litigating cases in your community in Miami? Or are you just dealing with cases that are, big cases and high profile? That's great, but you're not really part of the Miami, litigation community or M&A deals. Are you dealing with, with transactions with your peers down the street? Or are you just dealing with national cases? There are some big firms that have offices here and they don't do any work here. We're bankruptcy lawyers. There are firms that have huge practices here that we don't see them in bankruptcy court.
Right.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's another factor is, do you want to be part of, the local community? Like I said, it didn't even occur to me until I started my own firm, and I was like, wow, geez, I haven't really hung out at the bankruptcy court like I do now. I didn't used to do this. I wasn't really interacting with the local practitioners as much. It's not never, but it just was different.
Yeah, there's one other thing that you mentioned earlier. You referenced, business development. I mean, let's be honest, you're going to a big firm as a young lawyer. They don't care. They don't want you to develop business. They just want you to work on their business. That's why they're bringing you in. I mean, let's be honest.
I was actively discouraged.
Right.
I was affirmatively told, don't worry about that. Hone your skills and the business will come. And nothing could be further from the truth. It just does not work that way.
Right.
But it's hard. It is hard. It's hard when your rate is very high and the retainer requirements are high and the conflict levels are challenging. It becomes very difficult to generate business. And with younger lawyers generating business, the natural progression is with smaller matters. I mean, they're not going to just, as you're a young lawyer, maybe you will. You could generate a huge matter, but typically you're going to get smaller matters, and they grow over time and as you gain more success. But small matters are hard to bring into big firms. I used to have to do a whole memo. If I had a small matter, I had to do a memo justifying why the firm should take it, and it became difficult. And I'm not say that not to criticize the firm, but I get why the firm was saying, we don't need $5,000 matters. We need $50,000 and $500,000 matters. $500,000, $5 million matters.
Exactly.
But I knew from my vantage point, and part of why I left was I knew that, hey, when I do that $5,000 matter, I'm going to do a great job. I'm going to impress this client. This client's going to come back to me. This client could be growing. As they grow, their matters grow. But more importantly, they have friends and peers and colleagues and employees and counterparties, and all those parties need lawyers. And so people ask each other. That's how you build a book. You start with one matter, and that one multiplies into other matters. So that's another consideration I think that young lawyers are probably not thinking about.
Yeah.
It's not front and center, but to the same way partnership track is important, because every young lawyer, you're taught when you're in law school to ask about partnership. If partnership's important to you, then business development better be important to you, because you're not going to make partner if you don't have any ability to generate business.
Yeah. Ask the questions that you want the answers to.
And have the courage to think long term. I'll say this last comment is that I remember feeling that pressure to just get the job. And the hardest thing is to not take the first job that comes along. And how many lawyers do we know that have today a practice 20, 30 years later that was a product of just they got this particular job, and then they got pigeonholed into a practice that they didn't want to do, but that's the job that was available. And so that's not uncommon. And those people, not as a criticism, but didn't have the courage to wait for the right job that they really wanted in the practice area that they wanted, or the city or size or whatever that they wanted. And so it takes courage. It ain't easy. But if you want fulfillment, have the courage to do what Simon said. I don't remember exactly the quote, but
turn down the money.
Don't follow just the money.
Don't follow just the money. That's right.
Think about, this is your life. You only get one shot here, so make it count. Brett,
Jeff,
thank you for chatting with me. Nelson, hang on one second. I just want to say one thing. If you like this podcast, please give us a 5-star review. That's the one thing I want to say. Follow us, share it with your friends and family, and we will see you next time.
If you share it with
it's
them.
very easy to give a 5-star review, by the way. I've started doing it on some of the podcasts I follow.
It's a touch.
You don't have to do much, so if you
touch your screen.
Really, if you liked it, even if you liked it just a little bit, give us a 5-star review.
Yeah, come on.
Thanks.
And if you listen to us, you will be fulfilled.
And thank you, Brett, and thank you, Nelson.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Jeff.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @FastAmron.